Welcome to season 14 of the Parenting Aces podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Stone, and this week we are talking with Coach Chris Marquez, who is based down in Florida. He has been a junior and adult tennis coach for about 30 years now after growing up playing the sport, playing in college, and then deciding that coaching tennis was his passion. So I'm super excited for you guys to hear from him about his philosophies around junior development, what it takes to be an excellent coach and bring out the best in the students that you coach. And he's a great guy. So I'm excited for y'all to get to meet him. I want to just say I am headed to the Ojai this week. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the Ojai, it is an historic event in Ojai, California, which is I think about 2.5 hours away from me. They do the high school state championships. The Big Ten women's tournament is happening there this week. There's a junior event, there's an adult event, there's a pro event. It is just tennis, 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 and the entire community of Ojai gets behind this event every spring. This will be my second time to go, and my first time to go and get to see the women's championships there for college. So I think that's going to be super fun. If you're there, please let me know. I would love to meet up. I'll be around Thursday, Friday, and possibly Saturday morning, but would love to say hello, meet you, and maybe watch some great tennis together. Also, really quickly, those of you who follow me on Instagram may have seen my post. I was the captain of my women's league team this season. We just finished our season, and I want to just give a shout out to my girls for this beautiful necklace that they gave me, my little tennis racket. So whenever you see me from now on, I will likely have this on. I treasure it and so grateful to them for sharing it with me and being a part of our team. We came in the very bottom of our league, but we had a great time doing it. So just a big shout out to the ladies at Dana Hills Tennis Center. Now sit back, relax, and enjoy my conversation with Coach Chris Marquez. Hey, Coach Chris, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. I am super excited to pick your brain and have you share your philosophy, your way of doing things with the Parenting Aces audience.
Hi, well, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to do this. I think we got a lot of good information we can share, and hopefully we can reach out to a lot of people and help them and their kids.
Fantastic. So before we kind of get into the meat of this, I would love for you to share with our audience how you got started in tennis and what your tennis journey looked like.
Sure. Well, I just started playing tennis. I'm a little bit of a late bloomer. A lot of people called me a late bloomer because I didn't pick up a racket or have my first lesson until I was 11 years old. Typical story, tagged along with my dad to the club and just started loving it. And I just wanted to play every day. And at age 11, I didn't get my first tennis lesson, first tennis clinic. And it was just, long story short, I played every day, went on to be dropped off at the club. And I progressed pretty fast, pretty rapidly throughout my junior career. I started playing USTA tournaments in the 12 and unders. And then by the time I was in the 16 and unders, I was top 15 in Florida with some really good wins in the players' top 10. And that was, quite a while ago where rankings were actually really true, and everybody, nobody avoided playing sectionals or state closed. It was what we called it back in the day. Everybody had to play the designates, the state closed, and nobody was hiding from the section. So the rankings were true. We had, a few guys that were 3 guys within 2 years of my age group were, ITF #1 in the world. Like Ivan Barron, Vince Spadia, Brian Dunn, Tommy Ho, guys like that. And so it just kind of gives you the caliber of the level of Florida and the competition that we all had to go. And again, like nowadays, when you look at rankings, you could be the best player in the country could be, number 28 on tennis recruiting because they don't play USTA tournaments. So it's things have evolved quite, rapidly, but can kind of be confusing for the parents and the players on which the best route to go to college or pros. So after my playing career, I played college tennis at USF, here in Tampa, Florida. I live in St. Petersburg, and played there, won a conference title there, and then really just loved tennis just as much as when I started. Even when I finished college, like I knew I wasn't going to play professionally because I got a reality check, just like most kids do when they go to college. Like everybody's so good, and so, but I loved it, and I started teaching and coaching straight out of college. I thought about law school a little bit, but then I was like, my passion is really on the tennis court and trying to, help people and help kids, help juniors. Went on there, taught at some really good clubs with some good juniors, got involved right away. And then I became a director and a group leader at the Palmer Tennis Academy that was based in Tampa, Florida. And they branched off from Saddlebrook, and they hired me as one of their top coaches or group leaders to oversee the program and a group of kids from, at the national, international level and pros and so forth. So, and right now to this day, I've been coaching for the last 30 years here in Lakewood Ranch Golf and Country Club. I'm the head pro, high performance tennis coach. I do that, part privately and kind of try to balance both and work with players from all over and all levels. And it's been a great journey, and I'm just happy to be here.
I love it. I love it. So in keeping with kind of last week's podcast and kind of continuing that conversation around training coaches to be better coaches, can you talk a little bit about who your mentors were when you first came out? Because you're fresh out of college, you have been a player, but you haven't been a coach yet.
Yeah.
Or maybe you helped out people along the way, but
Sure.
it wasn't your profession yet.
Yeah.
And here
no.
you are. You've
And here I am.
arrived, and okay, I'm a tennis coach. What does that mean? What am I supposed to do?
Yeah, one of my mentors was my coach himself, Mike Cunnin, who has a big tennis family here in Clearwater, Florida, and Tampa, Florida. His mom was, I think, she made round of 16 at Wimbledon, and all of his brothers played high level, some pro tennis, and like at the University of Florida. And he really pushed me to love tennis. And then I always kept up. That's what kind of when I was playing, where sports psychology started making a run when I was playing in juniors. And one of the guys I always followed was Dr. Jim Laird, and the
His name
Pioneers.
comes up often on this
Yes,
podcast. Yeah.
and so Jeff was one of my teammates in college at USF, his son, and I got to know Doc pretty well, and I just was just fascinated by the whole sports psychology side of tennis. And like back in the day was Courier and Sampras training at Saddlebrook, and a lot of my friends were playing pros, in the challenger circuit. And so like we just kind of hung out, or I just kind of hung out on top of working and just following my mentors with a bunch of high level tennis players and a bunch of, people who knew the game. And I just admired that. And I always told myself from day one, like never have an ego and just try to learn as much as I can from, the people that have been there. So, and
How does one transition from being a high level competitive player to understanding how to break down the fundamentals of the game to help a young junior develop properly, develop at the correct pace for him or her, and to, work the roadmap toward the ultimate success, whatever that is, whether it's playing on a high school team, playing in college, playing professionally?
yeah, it's not easy. I think just getting the experience around the right people. You want to have certifications and all that stuff, which is great. But really, just like anything, you like if you're going to become a doctor, you got to spend time in the hospital watching surgeries. You have to, have actually do some small surgeries yourself. And I had the opportunity with a lot of players to start from scratch. Um, just to one girl or a family, Dick Vitale, his grandkids were all students of mine, and I started them at 2.5 and 3 years old. Very, very extremely young, and started them in the trenches, just developing technique, consistency, kind of mindset at that age level. And then we transitioned into high performance swings based on how they felt when they held the racket, and started adjusting more circular swings and grips and stances and so forth. But again, like I come from like more old school where like I was just somebody that just loved to like just take information. I studied the game a lot. I watch tennis up to this day, every day on the tennis channel. Um, I stay in touch with all the coaches over the last 30 years. And for me, the way I've done it is just passion, being genuine, and just love of the game. And if you have that and you have the right discipline and the right mindset and you know what you want to accomplish and you map it out and again you look at others how they did it, and that's been really kind of helped me map out my journey and my success in terms of like how I was able to accomplish things with young players, at all levels, and then older and experienced players. I've been able to do that and have success. But again, it was just a lot of just kind of groundwork, like just blocking and tackling and just making sure I'm around the right people and I'm taking in the right knowledge. And again, you have to trust the people that you're around, just
Yeah,
like parents do.
yeah, for sure. For sure. I have to ask you because you said something about not starting tennis till you were 11, but that you made pretty quick progress.
Yeah.
Had you been playing other sports? Like, were you already like a pretty athletic kid?
I was a pretty athletic kid. I was playing like some like basketball, and that's really what I wanted to do. When I was like 9, my dad's like, play tennis, play tennis. I'm like, no, I don't want to play tennis. I want to play basketball. And obviously, like I wasn't that tall. Well, I was kind of tall back then, but it was just like one of those things
Everybody
where,
else kept growing and you stopped,
yeah.
huh?
And then all of a sudden, like I just started playing tennis and I was like, wow, this is great. And again, I think what drove me was passion. You have to have the passion in the player. You have to have the passion in the coaches. You have to have the passion of the parents. And it is a major sacrifice. And I came from just a very middle class family. And I saw that all being sacrificed, but for the right reasons and for good reasons. And I knew that at a very young age, like how hard my parents had to work to get me that one tennis lesson a week,
Yeah.
maybe two, or to help me travel to tournaments. And sometimes they didn't come with me, and I went with a group of guys, and we went on our own actually, which I don't know if that still happens, but it was just one of those where it was just very independent, but I had such a good support team involved,
Mm.
and it just and again, I think being slightly athletic or pretty athletic really helped me, and just the desire to learn and get better. So
And one of the important takeaways from where I'm sitting is you didn't start till 11, and
yeah,
look what you achieved. And this is possible, and it's not necessary for kids to be, have blinders on and be tennis, tennis, tennis from the age of 4 in order to find success in our sport. It is so important for these kids to develop as athletes, to develop as humans, and the tennis is just a piece of the puzzle that eventually, as they get older and make the choice to commit their time and their energy and everything else to this sport of tennis, then make that next leap. But at a young age, they need exposure to a lot of different things. They need to learn how
yes,
to jump and hop and skip and climb and do the monkey bars and throw a
yeah,
ball and kick a ball and all the things, right? And
absolutely.
all of those skills are so useful in their development as a tennis player.
Yes, yes. One thing I like, a lot of parents do come to me, and their kids not even be in tennis, and they're young and they're, 6 or 8 years old and they're playing other sports. And they're like, what do you think is the most important thing I can teach my child at this stage in the game, whether they play tennis or not, or they go on to continue to play soccer or baseball, whatever it is. And my biggest thing, just in my own experience, the most successful players are the ones that are just the toughest, the grittiest, regardless of talent or financial backing or whatever it may be, or financial status. It's the kids that are extremely tough, and like my wife and I, we have a 7-year-old, and like we talk about like teaching Mac how to handle, her emotions when she doesn't get what she wants. And it's the same thing on the tennis court. Can you perform when you're not happy? And I think once you can start getting those kids to figure it out, like it's okay, and maybe we're upset, but hey, you got to go out on stage and recite this poem, and yeah, we didn't get the toy at Target or whatever it may be. Like, you got to step up here. Everything will be okay. So I think the biggest thing is just toughness and learning how to train or teach your child how to perform when they don't get everything they want. Because it's
And
easy.
whose responsibility is that? I mean, I know my answer to this, but
Yes.
I would love to hear your answer to this, because I think it's important for parents to hear this too.
Yes, yes. And some parents are parent differently, and that's their choice. That's completely up to them. But it starts with the parents, because I've had young kids where they come on the tennis court and kind of the parents aren't really disciplining them, and I'm kind of waiting a little bit. And so I give them a chance and a couple little, like, hey, let's get it together. And then if that's not happening, then that's where I will interject a little more, in the right fashion, in the right manner. And that's very important. Also, you don't want to scare the kid away by screaming or whatever, but be like, hey, like, we're going to do it this way. Like, this is what we need to do. And I think it's just, a lot of it just starts, getting your kid used to, like, the word no, or, just being able to perform, like I said, and move on. Resiliency is huge, and could get to the next task with the best possible attitude.
Yeah,
So
I love that. Attitude's huge, right? I mean,
absolutely,
it permeates everything we do. So we say this all the time, that tennis is a microcosm of life, and
it
these
is.
skills that our kids are gaining by playing this sport are skills that are going to translate into their adulthood and serve them well throughout life. I mean, I it's interesting. I recently watched an interview with Rafael Nadal, and
Hmm.
he was asked about how he kept getting motivated to go on the practice court. He's got all these Grand Slams under his belt. He's got more prize money and, endorsements.
Yeah,
Everything's set, right? What motivates you to keep going out on the practice court every day? And interestingly, it wasn't another title. It wasn't another
sure.
paycheck. It was that he would set for himself a goal for each practice, something I want to get better at today.
Hmm.
And we talk a lot about on this podcast, a lot about that kind of 1% rule. Every time you work on your tennis, whether it's hitting balls on a court, whether it's in the gym, whether it's reading a book, whether it's watching tape, whether it's working on mindfulness, whatever it is, every time strive for a 1% improvement. And over time, those 1% add up to
Yeah,
this massive change, right? And I loved hearing Rafa say that, because people who
sure.
have followed me for a while know I'm a huge fan of his.
So am I.
Yeah. But I thought it was so cool that for him to articulate that, and to be able to share that insight into what drove him to keep coming back day after day after day, through injury, through
Yeah.
personal strife, whatever it was, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
And I was interested, and he didn't really get into this that much, but, like, how does a coach help instill that type of work ethic in a young player?
Yeah, it's very, you have to be very cautious in a sense. I think the first thing is knowing your player's personality and getting to know them completely on and off the court, what they like, what they don't like, getting to know, like, some players need more attention, some players don't need extra amount of attention. And it's about knowing, and I call it their tennis personality. You know what I mean? Like, so I have a
Yeah, I like
player,
that.
yeah, who just loses their mind, like, if they, lose and miss an easy four, and I'm like, God, your tennis personality is getting the best of you right now. You know, and it's just kind of understanding the psyche of the player personally, on and off the court, and the approach, when to say things, when not to say things, and how to say them. Sometimes good coaching is not saying a whole lot, and that goes back to our conversation earlier, where some coaches try to impress by saying all this stuff that sounds really great, but it really doesn't pertain to the situation at hand, or it's not really relevant to what's at stake on the court at that moment,
Mhm.
so and a lot of professionals on the tour, they want short, quick instruction, depending upon the day of the tournament, or the morning of. You can't information overload with them, because some want to stay calm and only have one or two things, some want four things, some want one thing, some want just encouragement, but to instill the work ethic is, again, knowing their personality, their level of passion, which has to be a 10 if you want to be good, their level of discipline, what is that on a scale of 1 to 10, their level of resiliency, what is that? And those are questions that you want to talk to about with your students or your players in the very beginning. So, okay, you feel like your level of resiliency is at a 6, and let's look at your results. Okay, yeah, it kind of shows you've lost a few third setters. You were up 3-1 half the time in the third set, and we've kind of fallen apart. Let's get that up to an 8. Let's shoot for the 10, but we'll be happy if we get to an 8, and then let's get to that 9 or 10. And then just a lot of communication,
Mm.
and just getting to know your players is super, super important. That way you can motivate, they trust you, and they're very comfortable with you. I think a big thing, one of the most important things in coaching in the dynamics, is just comfortability. And
Right.
if we've all had a teacher when we were growing up, like, oh, I love her or him because I'm so comfortable going in to talk to them at the end of the day, and there's those teachers where I don't even want to go talk to that person, so you don't learn as much, right? So
Yeah.
you have to have that open line of communication where they're comfortable in all aspects, on and off the court, no matter what time of the day it is, whether they're overseas at a tournament and you're here in the States, whatever it is, you have to establish that connection, and that's the most important thing in my mind.
I want to get back to the resilience thing, because this is such a big piece of the puzzle
Yes.
for especially junior players that are,
Yes.
playing high level tennis. And you can see it. I mean,
Yeah.
there are those kids that, like you said, they're up in the third set and they crash and burn, and
Hmm.
others that are like never give up, never say die,
Yeah.
fighting till the very last minute. How, as a coach, do you help build that in your players? And how, as parents, can we help build that in our children?
I think the first thing is, like I said earlier, is getting to know their personality, how to handle them. Like, some people respond to, like, yelling. Guys are a little bit easier where you're tough on them. Girls, you have to be a little more different. They can handle it, but there's a little more, personality in there, or tenderness in there, or sensitivity, I should say. So you have to understand your player first and foremost, and getting them to be resilient is, again, communication, finding things on the court and putting them in pressure situations, because usually that's where resilience fails, is
Right.
when it's a 3-3 situation in the third set, and we're up 30 love serving and two double faults, and all of a sudden we lose the set 6-3. So a lot of it is putting them in uncomfortable situations and trying to figure things out, and problem solving, teaching them how to problem solve, how to handle to present their best self on the court when their worst tennis is showing, right? So again, I firmly believe everybody's different. Every player has a different way of operating. The coach has to be flexible. The parents have to be flexible. And I understand from a parent's perspective, we're going away 3 weekends a month, where it's expensive, hotels, plane tickets, entry fees. Tennis is a very expensive sport, and I understand the financial pressure of that. And it's you have to figure out, like, where your kid feels comfortable on that topic of discussion. Like, you don't want to be like, some parents, and I get it, I'm not saying it's the best way, but like, we spent all this money and you tank in the back draw, and we only played 2 matches, and we booked the hotel for 5 days, and those conversations come up a lot at nationals and all that stuff, or whatnot, and it makes the kid feel terrible, and it's not like the kid's wanting to do that. And so it is a team effort. You have to have the right support system, the right lines of communication, know when to be softer, when to be a little bit tougher, and kind of just the best way, I believe, is just how to teach them how to navigate through these different levels of emotions that come throughout an entire day. Because as a tennis player, as we all know, the emotions are high, they're low, they're sad, they're happy. Dinner always tastes better when you win. Dinner, it doesn't matter where you're eating dinner. You could be eating at McDonald's and you pulled out a third set against a 2 seed, and you're like, this is unreal. But or you could be at Capitol Grill, lost, got upset, and like, this sucks.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot of maneuvering, and it's a lot of psychology, and it's just getting to know your player and just kind of being able to map that out and see cues ahead of what's going on, or what could happen. Reading their body language and so forth. So,
Chris, talk a little bit about your philosophy of process versus outcome and how you approach that with your players and how you communicate that to parents so that they're supporting the work that you're doing on the court.
yes, that's a great question. That's a hard one because most parents are looking for quick results. Most parents are looking for, or players want the quick results, and I get it. Like, we all want quick results, right? So just kind of explaining like the value. I think the word value is very important in how you break it down. A, B, C. In 3 weeks, when we do this continuously, I promise you, we'll see the outcome. You'll see the value in it. And not to, we always want to do well in our tournaments, especially the bigger ones, where there's a little more on the line. And it's just, again, a lot of it is just balance and communication and getting the parents to understand. Again, a lot of it has to do with credibility and how you present the plan is super important. Like, I had a player who's so physical on the court, and she could do so many great things on the court, but like, she just had to be okay moving to the left and hitting more forehands because she hit a huge forehand, but she loved her backhand, right? So just for a quick example, I'm like, gosh, you love your backhand, but let's work on moving left more, balls that are slightly middle, and loading with the legs and attacking with the forehand. And now you have a set of different options from that left corner instead of just a backhand cross or a backhand middle or a backhand line, right? So you have to let them know like what the end game looks like at the end, and they understand so they can buy into the process. And it has to be broken down, step by step, instead of saying, you're just going to do this because this will make you better.
Right.
Right.
Well, and can you talk a little bit about tournament scheduling in the midst of being a process-driven coach or process-driven player, and how do you balance developing these new tactics and skills with this desire to be at a tournament and earning ranking points and seeing
Right.
your UTR go up and yada yada yada? It's a real conundrum because
Yeah, it is.
and I'll be quiet in 1 second, but this is something that it's a complicated thing, because when you are learning a new skill, until you have confidence in that skill, when you're in a pressure situation, you're going to revert to the old way of doing things that was more comfortable. And so then you've lost all this progress that you've been working toward just because you played a tournament sooner than you probably should have.
Correct. That's a very good point. And a lot of players just are so result focused, and that really gets in the way of the whole development. So I like to have my players, if we're working on something and we got a tournament in 2 weeks, and like, I have the confidence in them that this can be done, whether it's, a slice backhand, we're learning how to chip tactically instead of as a default, and again, teaching them the right technique, making sure you hit 1,000 of those every day or whatever it may be, and 30 minutes of it, and then putting in the live ball, and then putting under pressure situations where they can succeed. And once they get a little bit taste of succeeding, like, obviously success grows into confidence. Confidence grows into execution. So it's, again, mapping it out, knowing your player's psyche and how they process things is super important. I like to tell my players, like, don't think of we're only focused on the things you can control, right? You can't, one point at a time. You can control what's in the racket that's in your hand. You control the ball when you hit it. You can control your feet. You can control your mind. If you can check all those boxes constantly, what we're trying to work on will come naturally, will come easier, and you'll be able to, like, just without thinking of it as much or being afraid, you're going to be able to execute. We practice that. We put a little bit of pressure in practice. You play this way for 4 games. Whether you have to, chip every ball that comes low, I want you to chip it. Just even though they might naturally not do it, but just get used to the muscle memory, the psyche, the mindset of, all right, I'm going to do this no matter what. Like, I don't care. I say to a lot of players, I don't care if you hit the back fence, right? But at the end of the day, the value, again, the big word is value. The value of this will pay off, and a lot of it's the mindset and getting them to buy in and instilling the confidence. It's very important for, as parents and coaches, we know how to instill the confidence properly, but also know how to humble them too. So
Right.
there's a
Well,
fine
and
line
keep
in
them
balance.
accountable, right? I
Absolutely.
mean, not to praise them when they're not doing what the expectation is, or, not giving them an easy out when
Right.
they haven't done what was asked and
Yes.
what they agreed to do. And that's, I tell parents this a lot, that it's really important that you keep asking your child every 3 months, every 6 months, whatever, is this still what you love? Is this still what you want to be doing?
Yeah.
Because if the answer is no, let's
Yeah.
stop and let's
You have
find
to.
something else.
You have to love it. And I've had a lot of friends that played professional tennis, and the common denominator is, I don't love to go to practice every day anymore. It's more of a job. And then as soon as that starts kind of taking over, or you kind of feel that way and you can't work yourself out of it, then it's time to maybe change your goals a little bit, or pull back a little bit, take a break, whatever it may be. Maybe lighten up the tournament schedule. Maybe go have a little more fun, like go out, go to the movies with your friends, and have that balance. And it's not easy. Tennis is an individual sport. You're very lonely out there, and junior tennis, as we all know, is very catty, and especially with social media, everybody wants to fit in. Everyone wants to get, and no one wants to post a picture of them hitting a forehand because they're going to get made fun of, right? So it's more about the outfit or whatever it is, so you have to kind of, again, it's a tough day and age, with technology, but like, we have to make sure, like, there's that, again, that balance, and just giving them the right guidance, and kind of knowing when to pull and when to let go a little bit.
I love that you use the word value. I think that's a really impactful word to use with kids, and it's the why, right? It's
Yeah.
the, and I think when kids understand the value of what they are doing day to day, even though it's not fun, even though it's grueling, even though it's hard, even though their body hurts after, but if they can keep their eye on the value ball that's ahead of
Yeah.
them, maybe that's a help in terms of getting up the next day and doing it again, and the next day and the day after that, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, if a player's learning a new kick serve, or a kick serve, and there's so much value in it. They're like, well, it's just one shot. No, no, no. You have to. Again, a good coach is going to be able to explain why a good kick serve is very efficient, and it's why you must have it in your repertoire. The percentages. Under pressure. You know, kicking them out wide. That was just such a big thing I used to love to do when I used to play, is on the ad court, go heavy and wide and look for a forehand. You get more opportunity, instead of like, oh, it's just a spin serve. There's not that. I get it. There's a lot of value, but no, you don't get it. Like, there's so much value, in that, and it can help you in other aspects of your game. So
But being able to explain that, Chris, I think is so good, because a lot of times we hear coaches talking to their players and they just tell them, you have to do this, no, do it again.
Yes.
You did it wrong. Do it again. Do it again. But
Right.
they're not taking that next step with their player of helping their player
Exactly.
understand, I'm giving you another tool for your arsenal.
Yeah.
When you are tight, when you've got the yips on your serve, if you've got two other options to go to, your chances of having a positive outcome are way higher
Yeah.
than if you've got one choice and
Yeah.
that's failing for you today.
Yeah, absolutely. Like it'll take like the slice backhand. Like I think that's something a lot of female players should have instead of kind of resorting to it as either a default to laziness or a default of just being defensive.
Mm.
Like, and a lot of pretty much every female high level player I've worked with, I've made sure they understood the value of a chip or a slice backhand. Like, and I say, you use the chip backhand, use the slice backhand to disrupt, right? You're not gonna hit a winner, but you see it in the pros all the time. Like guys will just chip, and all of a sudden a loose ball wide or loose ball long off a world class player. You're disrupt. I'm like, why do we use the slice backhand? To disrupt, right? Keep it low or keep it deep to change the speed of the ball. It's just not used to like just that one. If you go to like tournaments, you see nothing against female players, but they'll just slice because that's the only shot they have at that moment, right? I think in the pros now, you're seeing a little more, you're seeing that evolve. You see it in the male side of the game tremendously. And I think that's just one small example of many examples that where you explain the value of the slice, the chip backhand, and, the different parts of the court, the way it disrupts, certain types of players don't like that because of their swing path or their grips, and some players just hate it, right?
Yeah.
Or don't like it. Girls like the ball to be big and flat. The ball's rotating a little more these days with female tennis, but again, like Justine Henin, Martina Hingis, girls like that use the slice backhand wonderful. Steffi Graf,
Yeah.
they use, if you watch the greats, how they use that one slice backhand, that chip backhand, you can learn so much. And I think again, it has to go. You have to be able to explain the reasoning why it's so good and how the different patterns that entail the success of that shot.
Yeah.
So,
What's coming through loud and clear as we're talking is you are such a student of the game. You have
no,
studied
thanks.
players, you've studied shots, you've studied tactics, and you're able, because you have put the work in, the value of that is that you're able to impart that to the players and help them become students of the game as well. And I think most players, I won't say all because there's always that exception to the rule, but most players who find success in this sport at a high level have become students of the game.
Sure.
And they're able to do things on a tennis court and with a tennis ball that non-students of the game just can't do.
Yeah, very true. Yeah. And
And there are a lot of resources out there to study the game
100%. Yeah.
now. I mean, my gosh, you can watch any match ever recorded in history now on YouTube, or you can find
Yeah.
it somewhere online.
Yeah. And there's the tennis channel, like, I'm lucky. My wife loves to watch tennis, so we watch it a lot. And she'll ask me questions, or I'll ask her because she's like, I love it when you talk shop or whatever. I'm like, really? I'm like, I feel like it's boring to you. She goes, no, I absolutely love it. And like, I'll ask her questions, and she'll give me a reply. And I'm like, that wasn't bad. That was actually, because she's like, I hear you talk when you talk to people and all that stuff. But again, it's just, to be a great coach or a good coach or an effective coach, like you have to put the ego aside. You have to understand the game, and you have to have that passion, and you always have to be willing to learn. Like I think that's one of the funnest things about this job is, like, I'm constantly learning every day. We all make mistakes. I'm not perfect out there. But I want to do, if I look back on my day and I'm like, oh, I could have done this better. Yeah, tomorrow I'm going to make that change, and for the benefit of my students and my players. And, whether it's a communication thing or, I just didn't pay, lost, track of something that we were doing and I didn't feel like I did my best. Yeah. But we're all learning. And, like you said, there's so many tools out there. I think it's very important for coaches. I mean, for parents to understand, like, is your coach, like, where's their passion level? Do they just want to make money, or are they showing in their dialogue that they're hungry? You can always tell, that they're looking to evolve, and if you have a coach, someone that's passionate, that loves the game, always looking to learn, no ego aside, because there's a lot of coaches out there with big egos who like to talk a big talk, and that's fine. But again, it's not about the coach, it's about the player.
Yeah.
So,
Have to ask you, is your daughter going to be a tennis player?
you know what? She likes tennis, like
I mean, she's
her
7, so
she's 7.
yeah.
We have such a fun relationship. So she actually takes a lesson here in St. Pete at a club from a pro here who we love, who's great with her. And then once in a while, I'll go hit with her, and the best time for me to get her is funny, because if she sees me working with a player, like a young player, and they're good, like I'll have her come like 15 minutes before, and she'll sit and watch, and she'll be like, oh, she's like, he's telling him, she's listening. And
Yeah.
then all of a sudden she's very motivated, whether she plays or not I'd love for her to play, at least just to have the fundamentals of the game. So when she gets older, have that gift of the game, because it's a beautiful sport that we can play the rest of our lives, and she can enjoy it and network and, be social with it. And, it's up to her, but she's only 7. So we'll see.
Yeah. Yeah. You reminded me of Wayne Bryan when he used to say, he used to always lecture parents and coaches, like, take these kids to matches, take them to high school
Yeah.
matches, take them to college matches. They have to
Yes.
see it first before they can be it.
Yes, it's so
And
funny. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's funny you said that. We took Mac to the USF women's tennis match 2 weeks ago, and that was exactly what Wayne Bryan said, is like, she's old enough and she was excited. I know the coach there, so I texted Christina, and she's like, yeah, I can't wait to see you, da da da. And, Mac met the team, got a picture, got autographs. So that's where it starts, right? These are role models for her. And, to them, they're like, she's looking up to him, and like, she didn't want to go up to him and ask for their autograph or their picture by herself. She was a little shy, but she did it, and she was so happy with that experience, and she's like cheering, and that's where it begins. Whatever she wants to do with it is great, but at least she has the correct role models, and she's seen the high level environment, and she wants to play. She's not ready to play every day or whatever, but whenever she wants to play, I play with her, or she goes to a clinic.
I
So
love it. And,
it's been great.
not only are you exposing her to the tennis, but like you said, she was a little shy to go ask for the autograph or to ask for a photo, but she had to kind of figure that out. So she
Yeah.
learned a new life skill that day. And on
Yeah.
top of, maybe lighting that tennis fire, she also gained some confidence, just in her ability to go up and talk to somebody that she's maybe a
Exactly.
little in awe of. And
Ex-
I mean, what a gift.
Yes, yes. And again, that'll help her on and off the court as she gets older. Like, I walked with her a little bit, and she had her poster of the team, and I'm like, go ahead, you're on your own. And she's like, okay. And then, she did it, but I was so proud of her that she did it. And then, the result was she had this big smile on her face, and she had a great time watching the matches, and she cheered, and, she was like looking at all the scoreboards, telling us who's winning, who's losing, and she thoroughly enjoyed it. It was a wonderful experience. And, she wants to go to a pro tournament soon. And so it's just that process. And, again, she'll watch it on TV when we're watching. She'll be like, who are we cheering for? And I'll tell her, and then she's like, okay. And then she'll start cheering,
I love
so
it. That's
fun,
awesome.
it's a fun process.
It is a fun process. It is.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, it has been such a pleasure to meet you and to get to
Thank
kind
you.
of
You
see
too.
inside your process a little bit more and learn
Sure.
more about kind of how you approach this game and developing players. If people are interested in getting in touch with you, maybe they're planning a trip to Florida and want their kid to come hit with you,
Sure.
what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
They can reach out to me on my email. I don't know if you post that on the website.
I
Um,
can.
Okay, yeah, feel free to post it. My personal email is collegetorn@gmail.com. And it's the email I use. I used to run a ITA college tournament. If people are wondering why that's might be a weird email, that's what it was called. All the coaches in the country use that email to get in touch with me. And so I use that as my personal email. And then they can reach out to me on social media, my Instagram. I do a lot of tennis stuff on my Instagram. Not as much as a lot of guys that are thriving on their brand, but I do, several things on my Instagram, and it's Coco STP. My nickname is Coco. A lot of my good friends call me Coco, and that's Coco STP1. I'm sorry, on Instagram,
Okay.
and they can direct message me anytime, or on Facebook, Chris Marquez on Facebook, and I'm happy to talk to anybody and love to help anybody that loves the game.
I love that. And we'll have all those links in the show notes on
Sure.
ParentingAces.com. So if you didn't write it down, don't worry. Just go to ParentingAces.com, click on the episode, and it'll all be there for you. Chris, a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank
We
you.
definitely need to do this again.
Yes, be
And
happy to. That was fun.
yeah, hit me
Thank
up
you for.
whenever you have something you want to talk about.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was great. You do a wonderful job. I just started listening to your podcast probably like a year ago, and I started listening to more podcasts. And I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. And I try to listen to as many podcasts as I can. Again, I love to learn and get other perspectives. And, you've done a tremendous job. And I know you've changed a lot of people's lives for the better and players' lives for the better. So keep it up. And, I look forward to being on the show again.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your kind words, and I so appreciate you. To my audience, thank you so much for tuning in. We will catch you next time on Parenting Aces.